as a Lithuanian, how do you view the French deals and the large business delegation that Emmanuel Macron took with him to Beijing?
Stupid and naive, because thinking that they might overturn Chinese policies, this is very naive. And knowing the communists, because I was just 20 when we revolted against Soviet Communist Empire, knowing their psychology, I'm 100% sure that Chinese communist leader seeing that visit is just laughing, because he sees France kneeling. It's like, I would say even ugly, to shake hands with Chinese army, to have some deals that today supports Russia, to ask for Chinese intervention in creating peace. Under which terms? Mr. Macron, we saw a wonderful Sarkozy deal in Georgia that left Russian tanks in occupied territories. So do you want another deal like this? Are you not fed up with Minsk or other Yaltas and Munichs when you sacrifice the nations and people just because of your arrogance?
So it's interesting that Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, accompanied Macron on this trip. What do you think about her position and things that, she did have quite firm and pointed remarks to Beijing in a press conference of her own? She raised peace in the Taiwan Strait.
Well, honestly, I respect much more the role of the President of the Commission, von der Leyen, because she is the leader who made a lot of important strategic decisions, including she supported the candidate status for Ukraine, and we hope she will be the leader that extend invitation to start accession talks with Ukraine to enter the European Union. I was on the same train with Ulrika von der Leyen to Bucha in April. I was one of the first visitors together with her. We saw those bodies of civilians from the mass grave with our own eyes, and I know that it changed the soul of Ursula. She was the one to put German soldiers to Lithuania, who are now #1 NATO force to safeguard our own freedom. And I really appreciate much more European Commission, because they really try us to speak in one voice. When China attacked us with sanctions, Commission immediately helped us and united all other EU member states behind us. They are now developing the mechanism that will stop economic coercion in the future.
Let me quote to you something that Joseph Borrell, the Vice President of the European Commission, said after the EU-China summit about a year ago. He said, "The purpose of foreign policy is shaping the choices of international players. This also applies to China. For the EU, the best way to do so is to be realistic, firm, and united." So can you tell me, how damaging is it that a nation, a leading EU nation like France, are they going completely contrary to the rest of the European Union? And where would you place Germany in this?
I would maybe then tell you another story from my life. In my previous incarnation, I was diplomat who negotiated my country's accession to EU and NATO. And I was deputy foreign minister 15 years ago at Bucharest NATO Summit. Together with Bush the Junior and other regional presidents, we demanded a so-called membership action plan for Ukraine and Georgia. We wanted Ukraine and Georgia to join NATO. And we were vetoed, we were blocked by two nations, France and Germany, because they listened to what Mr. Putin said in Munich in 2007. He said, "Oh, NATO enlargement to Ukraine and Georgia will be a provocation to me. I could even have a war with Ukraine and Georgia if you enlarge NATO to Georgia and Ukraine." And you know what? Germans and French kneeled in front of Putin in Bucharest. They appeased the dictator. And what happened then? Immediately when NATO showed the signs of weakness, in 2-3 months, the same Russia occupied Georgia. And we said then, together with my president Adamkus, next is Crimea, next is Ukraine. We said it in 2008. Everybody was thinking we are kind of crazy or so anti-Russian and damaged by Soviet occupation, but we were right. We knew the Russians. We lived with the Russians for 1,000 years. We know how to handle those, beasts who attack us and kill us. And now the same situation is happening in Vilnius. In 3 months, we have NATO Summit. We are demanding NATO membership for Ukraine. We are demanding the West to make very clear red line to Russians, never ever occupy Ukraine. Because the moment we say to Russians, the war will stop. Because those communists and autocrats, they are attacking just the weakest chain. If we are strong, if we are united, nobody attacks us.
America, would they share your view on Ukraine joining NATO?
I was ambassador there 2010-15. And I know that country. So I would summarize like this. The wisest of Americans are with me. Those experts, those who speak truth, who are not afraid to speak truth. I would say half of Congress is with me. And this is becoming better and better with each of the visit. I cannot say that administration today is with me. And this is a pity, because I like this administration. I like President Biden. I was more or less crying when he made his inauguration speech about democracy being at the center of foreign policy agenda. But you know what, Mr. President, time is ticking. If we are not making the red line now for Russians in Ukraine, if we are not pushing them back, if we do not make a decisive defeat to Russia, if we do not give all the weapons that you have, including ATACMS, long-range artillery, planes, if you do not support them, if you do not accept them to NATO, so by the end of this year, this policy of yours will be defeated. And democracy might, for a long time, not to be at the center of American foreign policy. We might have isolationists winning in America in 24. So window of opportunity for global democracy is closing. We will all be in trouble. All, I mean all, in Taiwan Straits including. So please show that democracy can win. Please show that Ukrainians who deserve all our respect are winning. And China will listen. China will never attack Taiwan if we're winning together in Ukraine. But if not, you can also imagine another map of NATO countries of like Baltics or Poland attacked. You might imagine the Third World War starting. And
Americans have said since the start of the war that they cannot get involved, NATO cannot get involved, because then it would be the Third World War.
Well, war started. The problem is that those who started the war are much wiser. They do not call it war, but they attack us every day in a gray zones, in invisible zones, and they make us accept those occupations. In Georgia, well, let's start annihilating Chechen nation in Russia. Hundreds of thousands killed, nobody noticed. Georgia occupied, nobody noticed. Even big parts of Ukraine occupied. Well, still shaking hands with Putin. And we don't even remember 1/3 of Moldova occupied. We don't even remember the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan created by Russia. So a lot of wars. And actually it started in 40s. I have 4 kids. I am educated, free. I live the life and inspire others. Vilnius today is the center of Russian dissidents' most powerful group. Vilnius today is hosting the Belarusian freedom, We have a Belarusian president who won elections, but her elections were stolen, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. Vilnius today is the only capital where we call Taiwan, Taiwan, because we know that freedom is not for granted. We know that if we are not investing today into freedom of others, tomorrow we die. So let's be wiser, and let's do not be afraid of defending freedom and democracy.